Jared's having a tough time like he had in Miami, like he had yesterday, at any point during those games, do you consider putting him on the bench, if not for a series or the rest of the game?
If I thought it was going to be the best thing to just take a deep breath and step away, then I'd say, maybe, but not in either of those situations, because both of those reflected, kind of having an opportunity where there was enough plays made to get back in it. The Dolphins game may be a little bit different, but I thought it was important to be able to play through some of those things, learn from it, especially just based on some of the things that they were activating defensively.
That's Sean McVay yesterday when he was asked a fairly straightforward question if he considered benching Jared Goff. And, if you've got a franchise quarterback, that's the kind of question, even if you're Sean McVay and you're great with the media and you're not like Bill Belichick, who would scoff and roll his eyes and say on to Cincinnati, you make quick work of that question. That answer went on a lot longer than what we showed you. I was stunned, Charean, that it wasn't no, he's our franchise guy. I'm not going to bench our franchise guy. We're going to work through these issues and try to get better. That should have been the end of it.
Yeah, very well should have been, Mike, and it wasn't. And it does make you wonder about Jared Goff's future and the way he's playing, the way he's turning the ball over this season. He just has not been consistently good for the team. He's had stretches, but not enough consistently to make you think this is a Super Bowl championship team.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, if it wasn't for Carson Wentz, there'd be a lot more scrutiny on whether or not Jared Goff is really delivering on the promise that made him the first overall pick in 2016. All right, rewatch time. 49ers upsetting the Rams, completing the sweep. Kyle Shanahan getting the better of Sean McVay twice. And it's these two coaches who represented the NFC in each of the last two Super Bowls. Best player on the field, Charean, after you took a closer look at the game.
It almost feels like Chuck Halley-ish, right? Well, Chuck Halley's the only player on a losing team to win Super Bowl MVP award, and of course he did it against
Chuck Halley
way back when we were young.
He's from
the
town I grew up in. Went to Warwood High School. The claim to fame, the only MVP ever Super Bowl MVP from the losing team, Chuck Halley of Wheeling, West Virginia. Yes, I'm stunned and disappointed that you didn't know that.
Yeah, I should have known that. Darn it. But Aaron Donald is a lot like Chuck Halley in that he was on the losing side of this, but it was not his fault. And I think his performance, Mike, on Sunday shows two things. One, it shows why he is going to win Defensive Player of the Year yet again. They might as well just rename the trophy the Aaron Donald Defensive Player of the Year Award. Already, I would say the greatest at his position in NFL history. If he's not the greatest, he's definitely in the top 2 or 3. He's right there for that. But it also shows why he is not, as the best player in the NFL, is not going to win the MVP award, because everything he did should have meant a Rams victory, but it didn't because of Jared Goff, who we just talked about, and we'll talk about more coming up. I mean, this guy had 5 tackles. He had a sack. He had 4 quarterback hits. He had a tackle for loss. He had a pass defense that was intercepted. He had a forced fumble that led to a defensive touchdown. I mean, what else do you want the guy to do? They started double and triple teaming him to keep him out of the backfield because he was killing the 49ers play after play after play. Just an outstanding performance. And, there are a lot of questions that he was asked at the end of last week about, hey, you haven't had any sacks the last 2 weeks. What's the deal? He answered that on Sunday against the 49ers.
Yeah, and one thing that he may have done 6 weeks ago when the 49ers beat the Rams after Deebo Samuel had 66 receiving yards and a touchdown. He was asked about, Deebo Samuel, and he said, "Who's that?" So if he didn't know then, he knows now, because Samuel, who hadn't played in 5 weeks, was spectacular. He's my player of the game. He was the offense for the 49ers. Want to get this absolutely right here. Where is it? And I thought I had the stats open. Of course, I didn't. He had 11 catches for over 100 receiving yards. Didn't have any rushing attempts. Usually he does. There we go. Thank you very much. 133 yards. He was clearly the best player on offense. Clearly the best player on either side of the ball for the 49ers after 5 weeks of not playing. And he took to Twitter afterward and tweeted a gif of Aaron Donald slamming down his helmet. So, Aaron Donald knows who Deebo Samuel is now. And Samuel is a guy that the 49ers took early in the second round of the 2014 draft when they could have taken DK Metcalf. And they took another receiver early third round. I wonder what they would have done if DK Metcalf was still on the board. And can you imagine if the 49ers had come out of the 2019 draft with Deebo Samuel and DK Metcalf?
That would be unbelievable, Mike. And he is just an outstanding player, and he showed it again. And the funny thing is, somebody responded to his tweet about Aaron Donald saying it takes a really brave man to put that up about Aaron Donald. And he tweeted, Deebo ain't never feared a soul on that gridiron or in real life. And he showed it. I mean, just an outstanding performance. And he shows you what he means to the 49ers. Had missed a few games this season. He's a really good player, Mike. And when we start mentioning the best receivers in the NFL, we don't talk about him very much. But I think we need to start. If he can stay in the lineup, I think he's going to be one of those guys we do talk about.
It was Jalen Hurd of Baylor taking 3 picks after DK Metcalf by the 49ers instead of DK since he was gone. And Hurd hasn't done anything yet. He's been on injured reserve for the last 2 years. All right, a player who, after further review, performed better than you may have originally thought, Charean.
Well, Kerry Hyder spent some time with the Cowboys over the last few years, and so I got to know him a little bit. I mean, he was just a guy, right? He's a Jag, and he didn't do very much. And he had 10 career sacks before this year, so that tells you exactly where he was. He has 7.5 sacks this season, Mike, and he had 2 sacks, 4 tackles, 4 quarterback hits, a fumble recovery. They returned 14 yards against the Rams and just really played well, and he's played well. I think he has 4 sacks over the last 4 weeks, and with Nick Bosa being out and Dee Ford is now not going to return. Kyle Shanahan said earlier today he doesn't expect Dee Ford to return. So with those guys out, Kerry Hyder's getting his chance, and I think he's showing he can be a very productive player for somebody this year and into the future.
You know, and I originally had Jimmy Ward as my guy. We gave him some props as Defensive Player of the Week. I'm going to squeeze in some love for Raheem Mostert. He had a touchdown for the 49ers. He didn't have huge stats, but what really impressed me more than anything else, there was a play where Aaron Donald got a quick jump and blew past the offensive line of the 49ers, and he was, I believe, going to end the life of Nick Mullins if Raheem Mostert hadn't intervened to stop him. So that alone deserves some credit and gets Mostert mentioned here. Even though it wasn't a classic Raheem Mostert huge game, he was coming back after missing several weeks due to injury. He's back as the starting running back. But that play there kept Nick Mullins on the field. Otherwise, it would have been C.J. Beathard for the 49ers. So I got to give Raheem Mostert a little love.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And I think he's like Deebo I talked about. He really changes that running game. And another guy we don't talk about either when we go to mention really great running backs, but he's one of those guys. And the 49ers just seem to keep coming up with those guys, right? Jeff Wilson has a big game. Matt Breida had a big game for him when he was with the 49ers. I mean, it's just running back after running back. They flip them in there and they do great things. And he's one of those guys.
Speaking of running backs, a running back for the Rams had a game to forget, Charean.
Oh, yes, he did. Malcolm Brown, so forgettable. He didn't start the game, Mike, but he played more snaps than any other running back for the Rams, and that could dwindle going into the next few games because he had a really forgettable game in 25 snaps. He lost a fumble early on the Rams' first series, and the 49ers turned it right back over, so it didn't lead to anything, but he ended up with 3 carries for 4 yards and 2 catches for 15 yards. Cam Akers ended up being the guy, and you might see him getting more snaps, more carries, more action going forward because Cam Akers played much better than Malcolm Brown did.
Yeah, Sean McVay really wants to do the 3-headed monster at running back and have interchangeable parts like the 49ers do. If you can't trust one of the guys in a given game, somebody else is going to get more touches. That's the football way. They don't keep going back to the guy who's struggling. They go with the guy who's got the hot hand, and Cam Akers had the hot hand on Sunday. For me, it's Jared Goff, and I don't need to spend a lot of time on this. 3 turnovers. The interception that he threw to Richard Sherman, it's almost like Richard Sherman was the intended receiver. And I think it was Jared Goff sensing the walls closing in, so he forced the ball before he was ready. But, I mean, you're a professional quarterback, and you're making, what, $32, $33 million a year. This is not unfair criticism.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.